my opening comment should be, Mark, you're a cracking looking gentleman, so you work out. Good morning. Hopefully we're going to have a fantastic day. We've got a great lineup for you of fantastic speakers. I'm going to start very briefly by working out how to turn this thing on. Again, that top, don't worry, just stay in your seat. Right. Very good. It's a great topic. It's a fantastic topic because it's obviously something that we can all see out of our windows as we're driving along, these sorts of things. It's all around us. It's a brilliant topic. It also has all of the same sort of issues that we see all over the planet. I ripped this off a slide that I talked to agricultural students about world wildlife issues, and it's exactly the same. They're all those same issues that we see globally and we hear about in sort of conservation programs about the big sort of sexy foreign species and this sort of thing. We can attribute to all of our native species. That is not a native squirrel. It's sort of it's a North American one. But one of the reason I put it in is because it's one of those classic animals that really divides people. You know, and when I was part of the British Wildlife Revival Programme that was aired last year. There was a string of programmes, and there was a presenter on that, and I went, but he was going, I hate them. He was Welsh, that was a Welsh accent. And I find that absolutely, I was just completely shocked. He was going on that he absolutely hated these animals. I think, it's cute as Christmas. You know, it's in the wrong place, the grey squirrel, absolutely, and it's had an impact. But to actually hate them, I think it's a really interesting debate, and we're going to start, you know, looking at some of these issues because they're not straightforward. You know, conservation we always think of it as a very much a sort of a very easy to understand black and white, but you know, it isn't. There are lots and lots of things. But the great thing is that we can all do it, and in fact, you probably all don't. I don't call myself a conservationist until today, when I suddenly thought, actually, I am, because this is my house from space. There, and as you can see, I'm surrounded completely by mainly arable, but some pasture land as well, which is complete monoculture. And I took this photograph a couple of years ago during harvest, and you can see it is literally monoculture. It isn't organic. It's sprayed every couple of weeks with herbicide. It's fertilised, and then it's harvested and resown. And it made me really appreciate that, this whole phrase that we're very, very used to now, and that is, what can we do to combat all of that around me? And you see that these little islands, and even here in the heart of the countryside, we are desperately in need of habitat. And this is just shots from my garden. The duck is wooden, but we do have real ones. Just doing simple things. You know, I now consider myself, writing this presentation, I thought, ooh, I'm a conservationist. You know, I've put the boxes up, I've planted wildflowers, I've put the pond in, there's no fish in the pond, so I've got loads of invertebrates, I've got a whole ecosystem sort of going along. And then we've taken even further steps, me and my missus. Last year, or earlier this year, we put in the Bug Hotel. There's the Hedgehog Hotel at the bottom of it. And, there is no point putting these things in without giving them some sort of context within the actual garden itself. So in the bottom right-hand side, that corner of the garden is entirely left with wildflowers. So at the moment it's just dandelions, which is like, ooh, as a gardener. But it's there are foxgloves coming, there's cornflowers, there's all sorts of things coming, and it's absolutely brilliant. And there's the little path which my nieces and nephews absolutely love to go and explore the Bug Hotel, see what's in there. And it was crazy. Within literally hours of completing it, I had solitary bees going in and out of those holes. And it's like, they were just queuing up looking for those places. But they wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been for all the rest of the flowers and all the other lack of insecticide use and lack of monoculture all around the rest of the garden. And it made me realise that actually, this is not looking too bad. I'm very proud of what I've done. But not really. This is one of the conflicts. Bruce, a member of my family, He doesn't have the same ethics as me. He is definitely into blood sports. He has made this garden his own. And he thwarts quite a lot of the efforts that I've put in. And it's a serious issue. Literally 20 minutes, right, I'm down there. So, but even something as simple as owning a cat. But, the way I justify it, because we all have this amazing brain that we can, we can always rethink a problem and put a nice spin on it. He's castrated. Okay, very important. And he was taken out of a rescue centre. He was living feral. So by feeding him, he's less inclined to feed himself. He still does take mammals and birds and this sort of thing, which we've had words about. He's not that bothered. Even thwarting our attempts to, re-sow the garden with wildflowers, when we sort of put out our sort of little trays of seedlings and this sort of thing, this is what he does. But, owning a cat in itself is one of those things that, you hear, again, you hear other sort of, Bill Oddie famously said, he'd shoot them all almost. He was that passionate that they were destroying the songbird population in the UK. Well, we know that the cat population in the UK is now over 13 million. Over 45% of them are not neutered by the age of 12 months. Which is by that point they're already sexually mature and breeding. So there are things that even in the small animal veterinary practice that I'm working in Crewe and Nantwich and Whitchurch, we're now doing a neutering campaign. And that's all feeding into that sort of conservation angle. We're doing it for the animals' welfare, but we're also having an impact on trying to reduce the number of ferals and the number of unwanted kittens, because they do have a detrimental effect on the garden and on the animals that live there. Now, there are other controversies that I have as well. One of them is this. I don't feed birds in my garden at all. This is my neighbour's bird table. And it's one of those things that, for me, I'm uncomfortable with. I'm uncomfortable with buying peanuts that have been grown possibly somewhere around the world, that have been grown possibly non-organically, herbicides, food miles, all that sort of diesel transport and everything else to feed a small population of birds. And unfortunately, there are other problems I see with bird tables. You're attracting all the animals to one spot. Disease transmission, build-up of pathogens, those sorts of things. And, unfortunately, where this bird table is, you can just see the foliage here, where Roos sits. And unfortunately, we end up feeding them to him. So he helps himself to all the sparrows and this sort of thing. So there are those things where we can think, easy solution. How do we support songbirds? So what I do is that I basically plant lots of trees and lots of plants that will support the birds instead. So orchard trees, those sorts of things. But I may be wrong. I may be actually, in the balance of things, I should be feeding the local birds. Although John, as you can see, my neighbour who's 75, has put out about a year and a half's worth of peanuts. So they should be all right. But there are always going to be these issues. There are always going to be these challenges. Take this word, big buzzword at the moment, massive buzzword, and it's packed with emotion. And unfortunately, that's one of the issues we have in conservation, is we need people to care. We're emotional creatures. Every decision that we make is made from emotion. We think we're rational, we're so not. I talk to people about training animals and I say they're just like kids. And they say, well, that's anthropomorphizing. I said, no, actually, it's the other way around. We forget how like animals children are, because they are animals. Click, treat, reward. All of you, it is exactly the same. We naughty step puppies, it is exactly the same. We are emotional beings. And the reason that you all sort of like wildlife is not because it's logical or rational, and it's because we worry about the planet, and if we don't, it's all because you have this innate emotional response about wildlife. And it is something hardwired, this whole idea of nature therapy. And when we then start talking about maybe shooting Bambi, that is one of those things that it really splits the audience. You know, do we manage populations properly? And me and Mark were talking about, that's fine, if you're saying, right, we need to go into this area, we need to take out a percentage, 10% of the deer and this sort of thing. You name one of those deer, you're in big trouble. You know, then can you do that thing? You know, you've looked after this animal, you've named it, you know an individual. It becomes a very, very different thing. And obviously, as we're going to hear later, this is, you know, causes massive divisions in completely polarised views about a project such as bovine TB and badges. It's a huge issue at the moment. Now, that was me sort of vaccinating badgers, I do get involved in that side of things. I'm not an expert, but I'll quite happily, amongst lots of other people, give my opinion. Well, the great thing about this subject is that you're all probably actively involved in some small way, and there are always ample opportunities for you to get involved even more. So, enough of me. We have, like I say, got a great selection of speakers. Having seen what my cat has done and how wild his instincts are, we're now going to hear from Roshin, who's been working with this enigmatic British creature. I won't read everybody's biographies out. I think you can all have a scan through the actual what's this program. There we go. But obviously, Roshin's had a very interesting history working with lots of native species. You know, some really iconic ones, the beaver, but also this little known fantastic figure. So over to you, Roshin. Andrew's going to sort the IT.